get started. All right, so welcome. This is going to be a Folio quality slides here, and my name is Yogesh Kumar. Some of you already met me in the hallway from the last couple of days, chatting about various different things. So we'll talk about that today. I'll start with just about me. Agenda-wise, problem statements. I'm going to introduce something called library-centric testing. What are the principles of that? What types of testing we're talking about? What are the two pillars that are going to really make library-centric testing successful? What is the ask from the community? That's what we're going to talk about today. So again, welcome. I've been with AppScope leading the quality from about a year and a half now. As part of that, I've started a bunch of initiatives. Originally, I started with talking with all AppScope teams, community teams, development teams, trying to figure out the gaps, what we were missing. I kind of did a QA audit when it arrived into the our quality process. We had manual testers, we had automated testers, but there was not clear defined directions where they were going with it. They were working more like reactive, daily scrum to scrum, defining test cases, etc. But there was no process or procedures or any best practices being used. So one of the things I introduced was, we got to automate daily, and we got to automate more and more to get our successful development on daily basis and verify regressions or new functionality on a regular basis. So we increased our automation, by multiple ways, but just to give you a ballpark idea, we used to be about 300 test cases at that time. Now we're almost at 2,500 test cases that we have automated. And of course, with the large amount of test cases, you cannot run every day, but we have broken those down with, our priorities from queues and working through our history of tests, etc., and prioritize them into 3 different categories. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I'll mention anyways. Something called smoke test, basically critical path test and extended path test. The smoke tests we're running multiple times a day, or they're roughly around 300. Reason for running them multiple times a day is when a developer makes a change, he wants the instant feedback, whether his change broke something or not. Smoke tests are very good at it, catching that stuff, so we catch that problem earlier rather than 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, where there's so much code that already came in and nobody knows who broke what. So it's part of integration testing, continuous testing. That's the concept we introduced by doing so. On our nightly basis, we run all our critical path tests. They're about 1,000 to 1,200. We'll talk about numbers later, but I'm just giving you a rough idea now. But this presentation is all about library-centric testing. So I just want to give you a background on what we have already, so that this is not, considered as, it's a substitute for functional testing. No, the library-centric testing is an additional step I would like to create and make it happen. So nightly tests are about 1,200. They're all our critical path tests that are automated till today, along with we run in a one integration environment. You all familiar with snapshot environment? We run against the snapshot environment on daily basis. We create our own because QA tests require some things, and certain things may not clean up properly, etc. So we want to create the snapshot environment for the entire community. So we do that. And then on a weekly basis, we run our extended path test. So the total amount we run on every week is about 2,500 test cases in an automated fashion. Along with, we have 10 manual testers in each, those guys responsible for understanding the new functionality, writing test cases, etc. And eventually, that's all steps are defined through using the new functionality. They're part of the Scrum teams, and then eventually those gets passed on to the automation team, and then they're the ones who are automating. Now, because we have that, we have a little bit of gap. I don't know if some of you attended yesterday's meeting or not, but we mentioned, we need more automated testers to fulfill our gap. Our gap keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the reason for that is really, these manual testers write a lot faster, and our features are evolving more. There's a lot of fragmented, smaller test cases, etc. But our gap depth keeps growing. So just to give you an idea, in Poppy, we were almost 50% automated. Now we're back in Ransom, we're almost like 35% now back to down. Reason is the manual test cases are a lot more increasing. So our total test cases, along with manual and automated, is about 6,500 test cases today in Folio. All right, I won't bore you for more than that. I think I covered all the topics here. Two more additional testing we do performance testing. This is basically, we try to create a large data set ourselves, run some load on it, and some basic workflows or actual workflows that we know, which we're very well aware of. We try to hit those with multiple users at the same time, multiple activities at the same time, etc. So it actually helps us determine how well the product's going to behave. Our goal there is from release over release, we don't regress the timing of our software. So if it takes 2 seconds or 2 milliseconds to do check in, check out, it stays the same or it gets better. That's our goal. And some of you guys are in bulk import or bulk edit committees and things. We've done a lot of work with the performance team on that to improve our queries, to improve our performance in the bulk import areas and export areas. Again, all this is our continuous testing process, and on top of that, we also do a lot of RCAs on trying to figure out why we're having so many CSPs, right? Why we miss things, and that's what this is going to talk about today. Just to give you some idea that we did some analysis from last Poppy and Cosnelia and other releases, and we found there's a certain amount of functional cases missing, which is on our control. We update test cases and we go back to it. That's part of the continuous testing process. But we also found additional things that we will talk about today. All right, so problem statement. This meeting is going to be all about that. What the goal is, we've seen over 30% of our bugs that are fixed in CSPs, besides the security, updates and other things, are really related to the data or configurations of the clients or libraries that we really didn't understand it until we even went through the dry run environments. We ran some functional tests, they all work, but when it went to production, then we don't know what happened. And that was really related to data set. And I'll highlight some of those problems as well that are kind of data related that we found. And one of the biggest reasons for that is our data set that we have today is 3 or 4 years old. And one of the I don't know if you guys know the history of it, but I also learned the history of it because I just joined. The history of that data set is University of Chicago. I think 2 or 3 years ago, gave their inventory data set, and after that, we started using inventory from there and started populating our own data set on top of this Bugfest environment. And now we created a one big giant thing where everybody goes in and tests it, but it's all stale. And all the new features from last couple of years is been really, there's some missing functionalities, there's some data missing that we don't even verify for the new fields that are added, for example, and things like that. So it's pretty stale, pretty old. That's the message we want to do. Now, if we were to create that kind of data set and we need 1 million, lots of records, it's an impossible task. Not that, or were to create this manually, it's almost an impossible task. And we've done a lot of experimenting on that and see what can we do to improve it. But other than fixing the existing bug-fest data set we have, which is large enough, it's really 10 million records in our bug-fest data set. But fixing it is one possibility, and we've been trying to do that over and over from release to release, but we're still not able to catch up with all the new data set, et cetera. So, this is where we're going to talk about that a little bit. So if some examples of the issues I've seen, like previously created dashboards, they don't work when we go to upgrade. Reason is, our bug-fest data set, we don't even have a previously created dashboard. So the new dashboard functionality, when it comes out, we create a new dashboard, it works great. But if somebody had an existing one, it wouldn't even work. So, we found that in a production environment. I don't remember which university it was, but, and we had to stop, CSP upgrade and, copy release upgrade and then release a CSP on it, just to fix, a minor issue, run a SQL query, fix the data set, and then just do an upgrade. So that was one. We saw the rollovers issue, where basically a rollover process won't work. And again, that worked in our production, but in this library, in their production data set, it just wouldn't work. During migration, we saw, the invoices were not getting populated. A lot of migration is like profiles are getting lost. Some production data sets didn't have mapping rules properly. So, because of that, the mappings were all messed up, etc. So these are kind of roughly the problems that I wanted just to show you that we have discovered through our RCA, that these are data/config related problems.
When you say migration and those, do you mean migration up to the next release?
Exactly. So migration/upgrade, I should say. So upgrade is probably a word a lot of people are familiar with. Internally, we talk a lot about migration, but it's really meant as upgrade to the next release. So I want to introduce library-centric testing, where I would like to throw an idea out there with, taking the customer's data set and bringing it in-house in development earlier in the process and taking some of their workflows, trying to understand how we can test that, all that stuff earlier enough into the library. Well, this approach, will help us kind of prioritize our test cases very well. Like I said, we have 6,500 test cases. A lot of them are fragmented, smaller fragments, etc. But if we have a better workflows from the customer itself, we can say, oh, yeah, customer runs X, Y, Z. It kind of gives us a boundary around testing rather than, here's the surface. So, and that surface is endless. And as you know, we don't have enough time, to do both all testing together and development together at the same time in the release. So the more defined boundaries in the use cases that customer is using, the more we can test them internally, it's more successful story for the customer itself. So more upgrades, your upgrades are successful. That's the reason for that. Again, this is additional focus from our traditional testing, which really means, we want to do customer more focused testing, real world scenarios, etc. So that's what this is all about. And our goal, for this is really seamless upgrades for you. Make it happen, at least we find production, migration, upgrade type of issues a lot earlier in the cycle, and run them regularly ourselves and say, yeah, okay, well, Cornell's good, Stanford's good, NLA is good, amazing. So, that's the level we want to get to. Okay, so again, why does it matter? Post-launch issues, defects, we want to reduce it. We want to reduce CSPs. We want to reduce the time for you to adapt to releases. I heard in an upgrade call, upgrade notes meeting just a little while ago. Stanford took 5 months to get an upgrade done because of, they were blocked the CSP, and we don't have it. Yeah, I know. You're very thorough. No, you took 5 months because you found a bug in the first month, and you had to wait for 3 months to get a CSP out, right? We don't want that to happen, right? So at least the critical things, we don't want you to find those minor issues. Yeah, I mean, every software has some minor issues. We can easily fix them later on, but it shouldn't be your showstoppers. and we want to catch those showstoppers early. Reduce critical service packs. Again, we want to, create satisfaction and also build a trust, that we have tested enough. A lot of libraries I've heard over talks and things like that is, oh, does this really work in Folio? Do I really want to, think about upgrading it? Oh, I'll wait for at least smaller and mid-sized libraries are saying, oh, I'll wait for the bigger guys to first upgrade and then I'll worry about upgrading it. So we want to build that trust, having that kind of testing in-house and make sure that happens. Principles for the library-centric testing is all about, having production data set, having, data related to upgrade issues, having, test focus on the end user scenarios, which is our workflows, and be able to prioritize, our scope. Our scope is unlimited right now. We really don't understand how libraries use our products over different ways because, as you know, products are really, highly configurable, etc. And we don't have all those configurations in the house to even know how the libraries are using our product. I think I covered pretty much in here, robust data set, creating a production-like environment reference library is our strategy, and running basically anonymize a copy of this data. We'll talk about that a little bit there as well. But running really workflow in the house, that's our strategy here. All right, so what type of testing are we going to cover in there? Well, we're going to cover upgrade testing. We're going to cover also the job profiles within data import. Right now, that's a big challenge for us. We go to customer side, we don't have enough profiles in the house. We test with all the profiles we have, action profiles, resource profiles, etc. They work. Go to customer, the data import won't work. So the larger reason is, for that, their profiles sets are very large, very customized, etc., and that which we love to have. We also want to understand the user-based testing, permission roles, etc. That's going to be very important for Eureka, where we have a lot of new features that are coming in that area. That's going to be not easy. When you migrate it, we want to make sure all those things are working for you. We want to test, all the workflows possibly. We can, in-house. A lot of the libraries have those workflows documented. So I just heard even 5 libraries talking in that in the conference there. They all have documented workflows in different ways, but they have it. So we love to have access to that along with the data set so that we can run those workflows inside or take your help running those in some sort of a reference library environment that we can create for you so that you can run those workflows.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you talk about running library-centric workflows, would that be manually with a set of test cases, or is that something that you would script?
Well, so first thing is to understand those workflows, but eventually I would love to script them. That's the whole goal. I'm a big believer of automation, so I don't really like to run anything manually. But first we have to understand it. But yes, long-term goal should be, we want to automate them. What's the easiest way to automate them? To understand them. And actually, we were just talking about a little while ago too that even at the implementation time, if we could start with some sort of template to fill in saying this is how the workflow is going to look like, well, then we can run through some sort of tool and generate a script. It's a one possibility.
The rumor is that Tom is committing a grant, right? $100,000 grant to the community to pay for community testing.
100,000 need Australian?
Zimbabwe.
The international project.
All right, so one thing actually, I know I'm asking data and everything else. I know I've talked with a few libraries already about this, and in fact, some libraries already graciously give us their data set to play around. So we did some play around. And, the major concern comes to, when it comes to customer data is, well, what about all my PI information, right? What about all that anonymization? What my user specific information that you have? Well, how do I prevent that not to go to the community? My loans information, my fees, my structures, all that stuff. So, we did some experiment earlier on. And I want to just give you a little bit update on what we did with that. So we took one university's data set and we anonymized them. We took it was about 2 or 3 days activity that we ran through. We were about, we covered about 30 to 40% of the surface area. And what did we cover? We anonymized items, holding instances, users, vendors, and loans. And we used random values in there. What we're looking for from your data set is more like patterns, if you have a PO, how many line items booked to PO you have, so.
Can you say what surface area means in this context?
Well, these surface area means is if we think 100%, there's 10 items to anonymize, right? We only covered 4 or 5 of them because this is a quick POC to try to understand, can we do this? How long it's gonna take us, still trying to do a guess estimate to it. So the items that I'm listed here, items, holding instances, users, vendors, and loans, we were able to do that part, right? But then there are things like notes, for example. A lot of libraries actually add personal notes, or use specific notes. So we want to, basically anonymize those as well, right? Either remove them or randomize it. We didn't try that. Circulation, for example, on site, we didn't try that yet. Fees and fines, that we didn't try that yet. So, anything that can identify that this record belongs to library specific, user, we wanted to eliminate that, or scramble it. I shouldn't say eliminate that. We wanted to rearrange that so that it's not recognizable by anybody. Okay. Any other question on the anonymization? Sure.
What about acquisitions data?
Yeah, so we didn't get to it at this time, but it is part of our list. Yeah. I should actually list, I forgot to put the whole list in here. I should have listed the whole thing, but I have another slide where, from a different deck, I can show you what we were trying to think, and maybe that will be also helpful.
And you ran the scripts in EBSCO environments?
What we did was, yes, so we took this library's hosted with us. We took their production data with their permission. We created a dry run environment in EBSCO inside hosting, and then we ran, the script that developers developed for this, touching about these items here.
Have you thought about what that would look like with someone who was self-hosted or by another provider?
We haven't got to that point yet. This was just a pure quick POC. I mean, it should be the same, in fact, because it's running really database. I mean, you may need minor adjustments here and there because of your environment, but other than that, the data set, it's really pulling the data from the database, and it should be almost similar process with minor tweaking.
One thing I can think that would be very different amongst libraries is, cert rules and, fund structures and everything. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you're gonna deal with that from 6 different places.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, our goal is not to eliminate that data, we're just only randomizing it, as long as we can randomize it and arrange it in a different fashion, and it's not recognizable that circulation rule applies to somebody else, then that's our goal, pretty much, right?
You're not gonna be putting, so it sounds like you're not putting data from different institutions together, you're just taking.
Exactly.
Data and randomizing it, okay.
Yeah. No, there's no, we thought about that too. It's like, oh, can we create one reference library and everybody can contribute data to it? But that's impossible. This is where we are highly configurable, right? Every library is I call it snowflake. It's a flake, or snowflower.
To the previous question, being able to run it for a self-hosted library, basically you would take that script from the into his GitHub and run it on your data center.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're going to talk about the time that it took to anonymize.
I didn't, but I think since a lot of people are interested in that, maybe I'll bring that up a little bit too. Yeah, I mean, it does, you know, when we ran on this 10 million record, it took almost over a day to run it. You know, to randomize, you know, as you can see, the factor we played in the randomization was, you know, 0.8 to 1.2. So we used a multiplier and we used the Java framework, Faker framework that actually rearranged the data set through this randomization process. But the goal was rest secure. You know, the reason I want to bring up this slide is I know that's in your mind that, oh, I give you a data set. Well, you know, my data set is out in the community. I don't want that to happen. Well, you know, no, the idea is we're going to use your data set. We're going to anonymize the best possibility we can. And we're going to even give that environment back to you to verify and make sure it's not recognizable. And that's what we're going to use for testing data set, you know, for testing the workflows, etc. All right, so challenges, time, money, resources. That's the biggest one. Yeah, right. Well, over the, you know, this is where the overcoming the bias is about ensuring, you know, testing covers diverse library types. So, you know, back to somebody mentioned, hey, are you going to create, you know, one library reference from all libraries data set into one place? Well, no, that's not what we want to do. So by covering, you know, major use cases based upon the use cases that my goal is not to cover 250 libraries, by the way. I would like to see the data set and workflows and really determine what is the 5, 6, 7 libraries that covers, you know, my universe, right? And really get those in the house and be able to test it. That's the idea. So there shouldn't be any, I know one, you know, there could be bias about like, oh, you don't cover my use case, etc. But that's the study we'll need to do by understanding, you know, your workflows and things. I've done this in the past and it works really well.
Just to clarify, when you say in the house, you don't mean in the ABSCO house, right? And then it's in the community.
In the community, yeah, sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. Yep.
So you would have multiple environments with multiple different anonymized libraries.
Yeah.
That you'd be running these test cases against, and then if they're, all of a sudden there's a test case scenario that's not covered, it would be added to it at some point.
Yeah, either that or if there's another data set that covers that. So
Yeah.
again, we have to look at the feature by feature. That really comes from a lot of workflow access. Right? And goal is not to cover every drop down, every, you know, settings, every, you know, things like that. It's really to determine the patterns first. So all those things are covered with the 6,000, 6,500 test cases that we have. But we want to still see how we can cover, you know, a full end-to-end workflow and, you know, how one library, you know, 5 colleges library is different than, you know, what Stanford's doing, for example. And some of those differences are integrations too, by the way.
So would you, if you've got 6,500 tests that you run, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got 4 different production data sets that you anonymize from different libraries, and you ran the exact same 6,500 tests across that will already begin to flush out some differences.
It will, yes, exactly.
Without even trying to figure out the unique workflows for that particular organization.
But what unique workflow allows me is going back to Tom's question is, right, when having those, I can strip them and automate them. And if they're all working.
Sure, no,
Right.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, even just getting an anonymized data set from a large.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely.
Because I mean, we gave our data, just make it obvious, but one thing we did, I don't know if anybody else has done, is that an example was that when the feature about connecting authority records came in Orchid maybe, there was no way to migrate it.
Exactly.
But we wrote, we faked the UI, we ran something for 3 to 6 months, and we ran over 10 million records, and we recreated all the linkages. Now that is interesting because I don't know if anybody else has that amount of linkages.
Yeah, probably not.
And probably not. And so therefore, you can flush out all the issues that have come across with regards to those little subfields and the way it's done. Now, I think that 6,500 test cases and you add another 500 more, whatever,
Right.
across 10 different data sets. I mean, to me, it feels like you almost need to have a way to develop a way to, like, I redonate my data on a regular basis after every few releases, because things are going to change in the product. You re-anonymize all the data, and then you rerun them again. And to me, it feels like you're going to get a real big bang for your buck. Although I'm very happy to be an early adopter, because that means it's really testing well for my institution.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine to use other, this part of it, I think is the next one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other biggest thing about it, I mean, I don't wanna promise you we're gonna run those 6,500 scenarios because that's a lot of manual effort. But I can promise you definitely we have 2,500 automated test cases, which I can modify a little bit with your data set and run them on a regular basis.
Sure, sorry, I made the assumption that the 6,500.
Yes, absolutely.
Automation, not necessarily.
Yep.
That you're using a 10.
Correct. But, bigger automation suites we have, and bigger data sets we have, we can run them on a regular basis, right? Bigger coverage we have for it. All right, let's see what else I have. So what's my ask? Can I get volunteers to do production data set? Right, that's my ask, and if you're interested, how do I modify this? Oh, yeah. Okay, so, send me an email, please. ykumar@appsco, it's very simple. And I will work with you, we'll figure out a process. And if it gets overwhelming, I'll start creating Slack channels. There's plenty of Slack channels, so I wanted to stay away from that for now. It's more one-on-one, because I'm talking about, talking to one library, two library, a few libraries, at a time. So I'd love to work with you, and love to, even give you more information about anonymization of your data set. Make sure that, you're okay with it and some libraries even have a legal counsel, they have to get permissions from, etc. I'd love to work with you on that, explain to you how you can present your, justification case, etc. So, why Kumar at Appsco? That's pretty much it. And I think we talked about scrambling, the data set, but libraries documented workflow, I already have in mind, from what I heard, from in the conference, people already have that, a lot of people have checklists, a lot of people have, worksheets, some of them Spokesman library, I heard if they have a full, test database, that they do, a tool with all the steps in it, so we could at least generate it very quickly. All the steps of their workflows, etc. So a lot of libraries already have it. Maybe 5 colleges have different spreadsheets and things like that. Well, let me think about it, and we can probably come up with some either process, and I can use community's help to fill in those, or tell me what you have, or we can figure out a mechanism to generate that into our format that we want, or maybe to write into a test script itself. I know a lot of you guys don't like using test script. I understand a lot of work there, etc. But test script, we can also make it very simple rather than having just step by step, just copy paste the whole thing, but as long as it has some fields that we can track it with and saying, okay, yeah, this library's work. Well, this is what it means, here's the preconditions that you need to have, things like that. So we could work out some process like that, but I would love to see your workflow, at least to get an access to gain more understanding of what they look like. Any questions on that? Sure.
Stop question. So, you mentioned several times I get like a proper data set, and you started on it last year as a topic. Do configurations count as data sets? And I'm asking from a circuit perspective. And a good example, we've had this in the PO. I know that from the metadata management, they're saying, data inventory is, even from a circulation perspective, it's more like, there's 10 million records. I'll find one that is available, right? But the issues come with the settings, exactly, that they haven't been updated properly, or the other extreme, there's nothing wrong with the circ rule editor, but the person testing is like, something's wrong, but which circ rule is actually being used for this?
Exactly.
So anyway, so I think, and I don't know if that's considered as part of data. I don't think of it personally necessarily as data, because I think of like as data set as in like, you know, the items or the users or a PO line and everything like that. But anyway, I think I'm just putting it on the table to like consider that at least in the circulation part, the issues are the settings and not necessarily the actual data lines that like I use an item and I use a user to actually then do something, or like these rules and the policies within them, are they configured properly? Do we understand how they need to be configured? Like, or are the problems I expected a result and it's just because I don't know the functionality rather than it's actually wrong?
Yeah, and you're right, absolutely, you know, a lot of the areas where it matters is settings, really. You know, so when I say configuration, it's really settings, data, that I'm talking about a lot more. Yeah, and in some functional areas, it actually does matter, the data drives itself, the workflow, right? In those functionalities, yes, you know, configuration means that, but majority is all really settings data.
And I tell you, when you guys gave me the environment to look at it, that's the first place I went, was settings, and I was like, oh, we gotta take care of this, and that, this. I think there was a long list.
Yeah, so we missed, like, as part of the POC, which what she's talking about is, we missed phone numbers, right? Phone numbers data, even though it's not settings, but we miss scrambling the phone numbers. And I think there was connections settings, right? To a different integration environment that could easily identify this client or this library. So we missed that in anonymization. But those type of issues that, we found in settings out.
Cornell is maybe a cautious institution when it comes to privacy of user data. And from that viewpoint, I would really encourage you to be as good at documenting the anonymization process as you can and sharing that broadly within the community. Because from my perspective, without really understanding the anonymization that has been intended, you can't address point 2, which is how to check and how to know what to worry about. So, you know, I guess I would love us to get to a point where we might contribute to a public data set, but it's going to be a pretty long journey for us. And, you know, it's certainly bad for the community if anything were to leak anywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm gonna bring up, our POC for anonymization a little bit, just give me 1 second. Should have included a lot more information on that POC actually, by the way. In the meantime, is there any other question that I can address?
I think you might have said this already, but I think it's where supply the data. Are you gonna be using it for your own internal testing, or are you gonna be putting it onto like the bug test environment?
Eventually, I would like to put, you know, create multiple of these bugfest type of environments for colleges to really, you know, help me out with it. But if I can automate all workflows in the house, you know, then it'd be running those automated workflows as well. But it is community, you know, when I'm saying I need this data set, I really mean as a community, we needed this data set, you know, and then, you know, we'll host that for you, we'll anonymize that for you, et cetera, and then, you know, have community really run through the testing process of this.
But I mean, if you see it incremental, right? So like, you go through your normalize, you find some issues. So let's make the assumption that your proof of concept is truly slowing your proof of concept. And you haven't ticked every box. But if you're only running it internally and you're still running the 2,500 tests, you really need to flush things out, right? So over time, hopefully that will be robust enough and be shared across the community, and maybe a few more become on board, and eventually those institutions can say, I'm kind of happy with your process. I've actually seen the results. We've actually eyeballed it, whatever it is.
Right.
Yes, tick that data can then go sit on whatever the daily snapshot or whatever. You might have a couple of different snapshots, so I don't know how much it costs, but I think to me it'll be incremental. But even just the sheer fact of you guys having it and running those tests, at least you find the defects and feed it straight.
Yeah, at least critical free rooms, right? Like, for example, I took the example of the 5 months process, at least prevent you not to go to a next release for 5 months, and at least the critical aspects I didn't cover in-house.
Well,
You know.
the impact of that one, it's a good example that you raised on WhatsApp for us. We were upgrading to, was it Folio? And then EBSCO found some defect. I don't know what critical service patch had been released, and then scotched the entire upgrade process. But I'd already been negotiating with all the different business areas. So like, if you listen to the previous session that you guys ran, and it's a process to upgrade, right? So I already negotiated, spent time, and then suddenly everybody got excited. I pulled the pin, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly I was now still in project mode with this big execs going to these board meetings, say, okay, what's happening? It's like, I'm waiting for CSP3. And CSP3 became CSP4, CSP3, et cetera. It became this random thing. And we didn't actually, and then the areas became, well, holidays are coming, it became really, really challenging, and we couldn't actually schedule the upgrade. And not just to create the time, the schedule, and that created another issue, I'm hoping this will flush that out so we don't have to.
Exactly.
Because I'm quite happy to wait if it's possible. I just don't want to be we're going, no, we're not going, and sitting with it.
Yeah, exactly, and I quite honestly, if we, as a community, if we produce a software on for release and we went through 6 months of process, and from day one, you get a, CSP1 items, there, or a critical service patch, we really didn't know our job good,
Sure.
in my opinion, at least from day one. If day 10, something happened, or you found down the road and it's not critical enough, or it has a workaround, etc., that's okay to me. Still acceptable, especially what other thing that is not acceptable to me is when you upgraded it, if your previous stuff that you were working on stops working, that's no go to me, all the time. So basically we're trying to see, this, over 30%, which is what I showed you. I have a picture. It's with the config data and data, it's almost a 50% of those bugs could have caught earlier if I had that data set. Right, so we could have prevented at least some CSPs out of it. Of course, I'm not promising we're not gonna have CSPs anymore, but we can definitely reduce down one size and timing of those CSPs. I have a quick releases, at least prevent from day one having problems.
Yes, I have a weird sort of point of view. What I'm thinking about is people said, I'm assuming that when you're anonymizing the data set, it's being done by the hosting provider. So, like, when I was the volunteers or data set, actually anonymize our data and pass out of the little community, but then you write specialized tests based on our workflows, which to run against our anonymized data set. Would it be easier or even quicker since to write those workflows and just run it on an EBSCO environment or an index data environment on our complete data set there and just return the results back to the community? Because you're spending all this time anonymizing data and Julie pointed out, a lot of it's settings. And then not only the settings, but when you jump from one file release to another file release, adding new user permissions, changing settings, all that pre-work has to be done. So going to larger institutions and say, hey, you have 1 day with this data set, go and change the settings quick. We're going to run all our automated tests on here and send those results to the community. Would that be a more efficient workflow?
It's a possible, but automation test requires data to use, right?
Right.
So if we don't know, or we're not familiar with your data set, automating them is like, it's next to impossible, right?
Right.
That's one part of it. And second, sorry, go ahead, Mark. And second is, the thing is, like I was saying, there's some functional areas that's not only just settings data, right? There's still, for example, there are certain data values that you may have when during migration that we didn't even change them because schema got changed. Right? And because we didn't change them, now the migration doesn't work properly.
But once you find that, if we donated our data, we're donating it as copy, and you're upgrading that to queue, that would be something that would actually pop up during the migration process itself.
And so just to jump in, this is part of figuring out how to do this efficiently.
Yeah.
Where at one point what I covered is like, I also see it again from circulation, it's often the migration part, the upgrade part, that is a lot of problems, but sometimes not because of an actual bug, really from how it's been developed, but it's more like, recently we had actual cost was a good thing, right? They developed actual costs, it works, but they didn't think about, which fair enough from a dev perspective, right, of, I want to switch my whole processes from set cost to actual cost. If we'd have known how to update the config, the configurations, there wouldn't have been a bug actually, because it would have been like, guys, this is the way to update it. That's that. And then because they didn't know that, there were problems that had to be fixed. But it feels like that maybe the flow is generally like first the migration, the migrate, and we're saying that also like in deploying, right? Can I deploy, like, will there be problems when I deploy the new version? So you start by deploying it and then the migration, and then the next step is that, okay, we say all the data is there, then we run the automated tests for things like, does this button work, does this thing work? And then the next one is afterwards when we say that what in my mind is like the basic functionality, regardless of how you use it, works. Then the next phase is like, okay, now I go and get some workflows that go on top of that. And I guess that's like the figuring out of all this.
Yeah,
How to make this
Western-
work in a linear, like realistic fashion.
We use the catching as early.
yeah, I was gonna say that, yeah.
Right, because, we start testing it on our customer data set and now on the market's too late already.
Yeah.
We would, and I think this is part of your strategy, shift left.
Yeah, exactly, that's early, right, that's the whole key, so by the time, you're already doing that in a way, right? I mean, if you think about it, I'm not trying to do what you're already doing, but I wanna do this during the development process, so there's not, when it gets to you don't run into at least critical problems, like showstoppers, right?
Well, and then actually like actual cost, like that should have been like, part of it, libraries want this. So there's stuff in set cost right now, what do they need to do?
Yeah, I know, because I assume like, it's new developments, and so everything was done almost like, when I start from scratch and I do my settings with actual cost, does everything work? And I'm, I don't know when, and even at like, we could say like, this is maybe something that Zig could have figured out and dealt with, and it's not. I think
That's assumed, right?
maybe, yeah.
And then developers think of it as foreign in, and I know we run into that with implementation all the time. Because it's like, well, we have to load the loans in normal, so you kind of have to recreate all the transactions. So
Exactly.
you have to preemptively warn them into the system.
All those go back to the data, we have costs and,
Yeah.
why have the costs increased? Well, it's because of the, shift left in a way, right? It's that at the end of each sprint, we want to run regression tests, just to make sure that the functionality is in new, bugs. But parallel to that, we're also running migration tests. So we take an existing data set and we're trying to upgrade it to the new version. The data set that's being used is still bug tests, which is a tool that we use on anonymized client data.
So, and maybe just to add to this, and as a comment, I don't know how my full vision is yet, I have to think about it, but I still see this as one part of a palette of options to test Folio, I guess. Be it one, because, I don't know if general libraries will ever donate the data, because it's just too complicated, right? So you could argue it just as an extreme thought experiment, like, we will never be able to use this, or the other extreme is it's like, do I now sit back and wait for 5, 6, 7 big libraries to test everything and I ignore it? I still feel that there's value, I believe, but I haven't thought it through, of testing the product for the product's sake, regardless of how people use it.
Right.
Out of the product development, like principle, I guess. I don't know how, like, I love the automation.
Well, so that's where we're talking about, right? So this is additional step to our functional testing, right?
Yeah.
That is basically functional testing is all about testing the product.
Yeah.
Now one is the customer use case specific testing, that's what this is addressing, that I've tested all the knowledge we have, our 20 testers, for example, all our POs are tested, we've gone through bug fest,
Yeah,
everything else, we
right,
release a copy, on day one, we have a CSP one.
yeah, yeah.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
Right, with so much amount of testing?
This few comes across the time pushed out, it's good, it's not that point, but that's not how happened.
So that's what we're trying to avoid, right? So why not in earlier, on our development cycle, go through at least the high level use cases of our customers so that we don't have a criticality to it. You know,
I just one maybe final thought on the de-identifying the data. So at Stanford, we have an information security office, we have an information privacy office, we have a school of medicine. We have people who are full-time specialists in data de-identification. I imagine if we were gonna provide data, we would go work with them, and they would be a resource. They also, I know our security officer, probably our privacy officer, work with Simeons at Cornell. And Terrence, I imagine National Library has a similar function where you've got central government people who do that. So,
I actually approach every owner of functionality who owns now, I treat it as a business owner of the data to get their permission. So that was every function area of Folio. I approached cybersecurity. I approached the PII, privacy information, something or other people, all individually. And if anyone then said no, it was out the window. And then after all that, I still went to the CIO and I said, hey, everybody's agreed, but you're the CIO, and if you let go of this data and something happens, it's still on you, what do you want? So that's why it took, well, one day.
but if the due diligence is happening in a half a dozen places, and a half a dozen places are sharing their deliberations, or we'd be concerned if that came out, where we had 6 specialists in de-identification share notes, I think that would probably instill some confidence.
Mhm.
So not just all working with you, you'll get.
No, absolutely, right.
So that would be a suggestion. And
That's a good idea.
Be a presentation of WOLFcon next year, this is how we.
Because I think what you have up there, like, which is what you guys have done.
Yeah, well, that's our intent was, we did only part of this, but this is what we identified, what it means to anonymize the data set.
And then,
At least from our, experience.
and then as you pulled in other experts, like you found errors, and then allowing us to relook at the data again.
Exactly.
That will then create all these steps, and then you can almost put that together in a document and say, this is what we've done.
Right.
And this is. all.
Right, so document that, go, create an environment for you, you go back to your departments that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Ask them to go play around with this environment, seeing if you can identify, it looks like your data or somebody else's data.
Because if you give it back to me and we run it something, I can ask the different areas, say, go look at it, and they'll log the data that's problematic.
Yeah.
And they can go exactly pinpoint it, and if they find anything like that, they'll.
And that's where the confidence comes, right? And if you give you a go and say, yeah, we cannot recognize it, doesn't look like our data.
The random things thrown into note fields, that's the big one.
Yeah, notes of, yeah.
That's the huge one.
So it's on us, this is, again, we've been working on this list with, a bunch of, community members, all across, and we've gathered this list so far. And actually, originally notes wasn't out there, like staff notes and other things, but somebody was like, I think it was Todd from University of Chicago, and said, well, we use notes everywhere.
Yeah.
Right, and people just put everything in the notes, and we said, oh, okay, let's put the notes in this.
There's also multiple notes fields too.
Yeah.
Notes on check in, check out, there's my feed notes.
Yeah, so we'll do every notes, but again, yes, the idea is that we're aware of that notes field. And we're gonna run through pretty much everything.
Providing service.
Yeah.
That's the other one too that I say, even with, ERM is agreements. I'm not sure how you would secure the agreements that are in Folio. Whether you just make them, because how much of that is private, how much of that can be healthcare? URLs and any URLs to electronic resources within business records. That sort of thing. So those need to be removed in these terms.
But maybe this is an excellent example where it's like, again, like the extra effort for the added value and the kind of, maybe we say like ERM is just too complicated to automate it in that way, and that will still have to remain like somehow separately, yeah.
Yeah, we could be small and also we can start some working groups on this, data anonymization. Definitely, and, take people's suggestions as well, that's the whole idea. Being community coming together and say, okay, what parts of anonymization is needed, et cetera. And, those are good points as well. Yep. Any other questions?
And all that with $100K.
Yeah.
And $6,000.
I think that on right now.
In your back pocket, but still.
I mean,
All right.
in the settings, like, have all those drop downs that everyone gets to like add their own, so now all those have to be.
It's like quite local.
In some way, but still have some meaning in the workflow.
Yeah, parts of settings, I think, not everything, but parts of settings has to be
Yeah.
anonymized, yes, I agree.
Look at somewhere, I think there was an estimate for, what is needed to bring it to 100%. Right? And the estimate was 2 developers plus 1 tester, if I recall correctly. And since, maybe this is not as difficult as Folio development, maybe somebody from the community can contribute a developer to work on this. Because the estimate was, so let's say 3-4 strengths, but the developers can test. Right?
Yeah, so we, yeah, so we think after doing our 30 to 40% surface area, playing around with, doing this POC, like Mark said, we think it's about 3 to 4 weeks of, 2 developers part-time, maybe a tester, working with this, can make half of, this anonymization script that we're talking about. But, we can use definitely community development help, rather than dollars from them in this case. Just kidding. It's like, well,
So chill.
Mark's gonna give me a loan, so it'll be fine.
no, we can use, dollars from Kate too, so I should say.
Get my director's spell sanctions.
Yeah. That's why I left my checkbook back in Boston.
These slides are available through the sketch app. The other one that you showed was with the anonymization goals. Was that from a different app?
It is, I will add them, since a lot of the questions came in around anonymization. I wasn't planning on talking about that a lot more, but yes, I will definitely add them now. I'll merge the two, make it, and make it available in Sketch. Any other questions? Anybody questions online? Don't see anything in the chat yet. I think I saw anything in the chat. No.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.